January 25th, 1915. Alexander Graham Bell speaks into a mouthpiece in New York, and his voice travels across the nation to San Francisco, where Thomas Watson, his longtime collaborator, hears him. For this first transcontinental phone call, Bell repeats the words he spoke to Watson almost 40 years earlier, when together they built an ingenious device that revolutionized human communication, the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell, an immigrant from Scotland whose mother and wife were both deaf, had a lifelong fascination with the human voice. He journeyed to Boston, and in 1872, at the age of 25, he founded a school for deaf children and began creating devices to help people hear. His experiment with an apparatus called the harmonic telegraph convinced him that an electrical wire connecting a transmitter to a receiver could carry different vibrations of sound, even sound as unique in tone and range as the human voice. To craft precision parts for his idea, Bell hired Thomas Watson, an electrical machinist by trade. Bell's eccentric ideas fired up Watson. Watson's engineering expertise inspired Bell. Years later, Thomas Watson recalls this creative partnership.
The telephone. I remember my surprise when he first told me that he expected soon to be able to talk by telegraph, explaining to me his conception of an electric current that would copy the vibrations of speech.
On March 10th, 1876, Watson delivered a transmitter to Bell powered by a battery. This early film dramatizes what happened next. On the top floor of number 5 Exeter Place, Watson hurried down the hall to the room where he'd set up his receiver. There, he listened.
But as Bell was about to speak into the new instrument, a motion of his arm upset over his clothes a battery jar of acidulated water. In the excitement of the accident, Bell called out to me, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want you." The big mouthpiece picked up his call for help, and I heard every word of it through the receiver at my ear. The new transmitter was better than we had expected or had dared hope.
A few months after this accident, Bell and Watson produced a telephone to demonstrate at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia. Away from the crowds, Bell spoke into his transmitter. On the exhibition floor, Dom Pedro, the Emperor of Brazil, exclaimed, "My God, it talks!" Bell and Watson, unknown inventors from Boston, dazzled the public with their invention. By October, they were able to conduct the first two-way conversation. Watson in a factory in Cambridgeport, and Bell 2 miles away in Boston. The first switchboard was installed in New Haven the following year. Soon after, lightweight copper wire replaced iron, making suspended phone lines possible. The rapidly expanding Bell Telephone Company turned west, connecting with Chicago by 1892. Phone lines stretched further. The goal, a transcontinental service. But in Denver, engineers met with an obstacle. The signal from New York grew weak, and voices became barely audible. Thicker wires were used, but the problem persisted. Then, in 1906, an amplifier was invented, eventually boosting signals loud enough to reach the far west. By 1915, the long-anticipated transcontinental link had been made. Bell, in New York, telephoned Watson in San Francisco.
And even when he spoke into a reproduction of his first telephone, his voice brought clearly to me the words of that now historic first sentence, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want you."
In the years to come, the telephone, along with the telegraph, transformed the battlefields of World War I, tying command posts to trenches instantly. By the 1920s, the telephone had become a common piece of household furniture, and phone lines crisscrossed the nation, launching an era of global communication Bell and Watson could only dream of.